I'm going to welcome to the stage Stephen Conway, who is our co-host sponsor at TAFE. He's the CEO for TAFE. Prior to his appointment, Stephen had several senior executive positions for TAFE SA. In the last 5 years, Stephen was the Managing Director of TAFE SA Adelaide South, one of the 3 large institutes in that state. As part of his TAFE SA-wide responsibilities, Stephen also held several executive portfolios such as industrial relations, marketing and international education. Stephen is the current chair of TAFE Directors Australia and has represented SA on the National TDA Board since early 2000. Please welcome Stephen to the stage, who will officially welcome us again today.
It's always slightly embarrassing when someone reads out a CV that you've written some time ago. I think really if I was going to represent my bona fides to you here today, it's probably my life before TAFE as a refrigeration mechanic. And I started my working career as an apprentice refrigeration mechanic, and long story cut short, when I went into TAFE it was as a teacher in that field. I was lucky enough, I consider myself to be lucky enough, to have been chosen to write the curriculum to change the work practices, basically all of the work practices in the refrigeration industry across Australia in respect of the ozone depleting substances that we were using. And it was really that experience for me that brought my interest into focus around the environment and sustainability. I'm really only here to talk to you very, very briefly this morning, and has been said, it's going to be a long day for you. So I just really wanted to pick up a couple of themes that are going to be discussed this afternoon and just build them into what I wanted to say. And the themes for this afternoon, as I understand it, are leadership and governance, partnerships and engagement, teaching and learning, that's the TAFE way of saying learning and teaching, facilities and operations. And I just wanted to speak to you very briefly about a thing that concerns me in the Tasmanian context, professionally and personally. And that is the way that the vocational education and training system doesn't fit in with the needs that we see very apparent in some of our young people. For those of you who don't know, the vocational education and training curriculum that we deliver is an industry-driven curriculum. It's described as training packages, and as educators we have very little, if anything, to do with what goes into those training packages. And of course industry, understandably, develops those competencies that make the training packages based on the jobs that they require today. So I see very little sense of the future. The other component of the vet sector, which I wanted to just bring you up to date with, in case you didn't know, was that it's very much based upon government funding, allegedly based on industry demand. And that's fantastic economics when you have a strong economy. It's not so fantastic in regional Tasmania, where you see young people who quite literally do not choose to come to TAFE because they do not see the sense in coming to TAFE to get a qualification for a job that doesn't exist. So in respect of leadership and governance, part of my key role is to be a policy influencer and to continue to speak with people, as I get the chance to, from the Minister for Industry, Minister McFarlane down, to just explain to them that what we should be focusing upon is the individual, the inherent good in the individual, and developing capabilities beyond core competencies. In respect of partnerships and engagement, the best vet student that we will ever have come into TAFE is a student who's completed a high school qualification up to year 12 in a comprehensive manner, who hasn't been streamed off into so-called vocational education and training at year 9 or year 10 or year 11. Because quite frankly, I think that for us, we need the students equipped for the world, and that equipment for the world will only come, in my view, from that comprehensive school-based education, just as I'm sure you would appreciate, those of you from the university sector. But what we see is that more and more schools are offering VET as a course of option. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but aside from the offering in school, what it does is it continues to disadvantage young people outside of the schooling system. And here in Tasmania, we see young people who, quite often not of their own volition, choose to not go to school and are looking for other alternatives. And invariably, the other alternatives are community houses, community-based organisations who employ people at the start of the year on the basis of a government grant and have to let them go towards the end of the year because they can't guarantee their government funding. And I just don't understand why it is that with all the economics that goes into to governments, state and federal, people don't understand that if you invest in young people, you're creating a sustainable future for Australia. And if you want to do a cost-benefit analysis, just look at the cost of putting someone on a social wage. In respect of teaching and learning, for us it's very, very important to do what we can do in Tasmania to ensure that we develop a more enterprising Tasmanian citizen than just a citizen who has those core skills for jobs that may exist or may not exist. And so we're spending a lot of time with our students talking to them about the notion of enterprise and entrepreneurialism and even wealth creation. Not wealth creation as James Packer would know it, but wealth creation so that they can make a life for themselves by making their own wage without having to rely on a job allegedly being placed in the Mercury on Saturday that they can apply for, because quite often those jobs are just not advertised. And the last point I wanted to make, and I apologise, this is very quick and very brief, is that another learning for us in Tasmania from a TAFE perspective is that bricks and mortar just don't cut it in respect of providing services to Tasmanians. What we've got to do is do more in respect of providing for people opportunities to learn beyond building educational edifices. I can talk about a Tasmanian regional town that has a high school, it has a trade training, it has 2 trade training centres, it has a TAFE facility, it has a purpose-built, high-quality dairy college, and there is still no increase in the uptake in that regional town of people undertaking education. Now, my view is that's because the economy isn't there and people aren't going to go and do a course of study for a job that won't exist. So I guess what I just really wanted to paint for you very, very quickly this morning is a view that the challenges for TAFE in Tasmania, very similar to challenges across TAFE and other providers in Australia, is not that we need to compete with each other, but it's about what can we do to ensure the sustainability of Australia's future through our educational processes. And for many people that we educate, the industry demand model, the competency-based model works very, very well for them. But it's the people on the margin that I'm concerned about. And ultimately, whether we're talking about the environment, whether we're talking about recycling, whether we're talking about turning light switches off, it's always that issue on the margin that tends to get forgotten. So, look, I want to wish you very, very well with your conference. I'll be here for most of the morning and certainly be at the dinner tonight to hand out an award. And I just commend you for having the interest, and your organisations for having the interest in this notion of sustainability. So, thank you for listening.